I'm back, man. How you doing?
Great. How's it going?
Good, man. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to. How's the audio over there?
Audio's good. It's clear, all the way from San Diego. So we're good.
Nice.
Nice.
Right on.
And how'd the race go today?
Oh, it was good. It was a fun day. We went just get the legs turning over a bit, and it was beautiful. My perfect weather today, so super lucky.
And how were the flowers?
Yeah, we got some flower time in. That was nice. Thank you for that.
But no worries, I'm glad to accommodate that. So, let's go off first telling them more about you, because you're one of the, again, in my opinion, one of the top ultra runners in on the planet.
Well, it's really nice of you to say that.
You've done some incredible things. We're going to get a few things I really want to check off. Your run streak is crazy, real crazy, to the point that a lot of people ask me, like, okay, like, you need to ask this guy some questions about how he stays healthy, what those runs look like, because again, that run streak is in the midst of you accomplishing some big victories at some major, long, multi-day races. So first off, tell them more about what you've done, and don't be too humble here, Sean. We need to hear we need to hear your accomplishments. Yeah, and give us a little bit of insight.
Well, sure, yeah. So you bring up an interesting topic about, the run streak and trying to fit that in with, running longer distances, especially when you start running hard marathons, ultra marathons, 100 milers, 200 milers. So, yeah, I mean, I can definitely dig into detail there and talk a little bit about, like, what I do in terms of, the distances and efforts and so forth in between. I can start talking about my streak just to give you a quick synopsis. I mean, I started basically from just lifting weights in the gym a little bit and not doing any cardio. And then I sort of did a 180, and I just wanted to feel like super energized. And I thought, oh, runners are always looking like they're super full of energy. So I essentially did that and started from scratch. And yeah, I set the minimum for the streak, which I get asked a lot. It's 2 miles, and my whole focus was just to make sure that I provided myself a goal that was like easy, like no excuses. And so I was like, everyone has 15 to 20 minutes every single day, like no excuses. No one could ever tell you like you won't have enough time for that. So I made sure to set that goal super simple, and that's where I started. And then it sort of snowballed. So we can kind of get into the details of that. But in terms of long distance running, I've run 8 200-miler races, and I have 30 100-mile finishes as well in addition to those. So I've baked in maybe about in the 80 to 90 ultra races, ultra marathons, and some 50 to 60 marathons as well. But most of my focus is on the trails nowadays, and everything else I do, like on a road race, I'm just doing that for training, essentially.
That's crazy, man. Like, that's insanity, right? And I guess from there, it just kind of spawned into one of those things where momentum's built, and I guess for you, it just becomes more of that, like, check at the end of the day, saying, hey, I did a run, and before you know it, you have 3,000 plus days ran in a row.
Yeah. It's pretty wild to think about. I mean, it started with just, I want to set myself up with a habit. And I was like, well, how do I figure out how to like set this habit and this goal? And I figured repetition, just real basics, right? So just do it every day and see what happens, and hopefully it'll stick. And so my thought was like, 20 minutes a day, this 2 mile minimum, and just build on that slowly and like try not to get injured and so forth. And the quick story is that I hit 21 days. And essentially, I got sick. My body was like, what are you doing? This is crazy. And then I wasn't able to run for like 2 weeks. And I'm like, I can do this. Let me start again. And I went ahead and hit 30 days, which was my initial goal. And then from 30, I was like, well, I can just do, 60. Why not 60? Why not, 3 months, 100 days. And then I remember specifically a coworker was like, oh, you should think about doing a whole year. They were kind of joking around to me, I think. But that planted the seed. It was like an inception. So I was like, okay, maybe I can do this like every day for the rest of the year. And then the natural snowball effect. Meanwhile, I started running races. Like I had my first half marathon about 2 to 3 months into the streak.
Mm-hmm.
And up to that point, I'd only run like 5 or 6 miles was like the most. I ran 5 miles and like 8 miles the weekend before. And that was my training for this like half marathon distance. And so, yeah, it was like a year of half marathons. And then the next year was a year of full marathons. And then just naturally, like, what else is there to try to do? And so that's definitely how it started and continued.
That's awesome. I love that you're kind of going off that, because I think for a lot of people, and I had a conversation actually earlier today with my cousin, is like you need to dig into that aspect of building some momentum, right? And when you are doing something so consistently, like you said, at least 15 to 20 minutes a day, in whatever field you want to get better at, momentum naturally grows, right?
Yeah.
And it takes flight. And then before you know it, the progress and the growth and the euphoria that you're feeling motivates you to keep going. It's no longer a chore where you feel like, oh, I really don't feel like going and I want to give my body a rest day. It's just that momentum is so strong there that you don't even have to think about it. And those 15 to 20 minutes a day leads into just, hey, this is what Sean does. This is what I do. And it doesn't, you don't question it, and you just do it, right? And it's I think a lot of people can learn a lot from that, is if you're feeling like shit that day, you don't have to go run an ultra.
Yeah.
But you can dial it back and just do a little something. Get your body moving, and chances are that's going to lead to a much more successful day tomorrow and successful week. So, very cool, man. And again, big props to that, because it led into 10 plus years, which is crazy.
Yeah. I hit 8 years at the end of last year. And then, I closed in on 3,000 days just about a month ago, or a few weeks ago.
So you're what, like a month away from 10 years, I guess? I can't even do the math.
I'm in my 9th year, we'll say that.
Wow, congrats. Okay, so going off that, how do you, because people are going to be asking, they've already asked me, they're like, okay, well, how does he stay healthy? What does he do in terms of injury prevention? Again, even for me as an ultra runner now, I'm incredibly fascinated on the aspect of like, okay, what's he doing to keep his body engaged, not broken down? What's he doing for hip mobility and hip strengthening and just making sure that there's no pain there? So tell us a little bit about that process.
Sure, yeah. Well, I think one of the keys, which is really helpful, was the consistency. So I would just underscore consistency in training. So like for me initially, like the first year, that 2 mile minimum was like very common in terms of distance. I took a real slow, long build and would do 2, 3, 4, 5. And then ultimately I would run, double digits. But it was a full year of just, really just building a base and getting my body used to the mileage and so forth. And then over time, you start to figure out like where your weaknesses are. And definitely like one of the initial things, especially if you're just starting off, is you might be carrying extra weight. You might be carrying extra muscle, extra fat, extra whatever that your joints are not really used to supporting, especially while you're running. So I would think about what are the things that I can do to help support that entire body. And it ranged from, not just the mileage, but, the nutrition side of it and like what I was eating. I started to think about that. I can go into more detail about that too, but lately I've been doing a lot of like boot camp HIIT, like body weight type workouts. Mm-hmm. And I focus on really high repetition, and I try to do things that replicate movements like that you're going to use while you're running. In addition to strengthening areas that you really don't really strengthen just by running, to make sure that the supporting cast of muscles, are actually strengthened. So I do two like roughly 45-minute workouts, like full intensity, but body weight, so not heavy lifting. And then I mix that with like pull-ups, just your basics, pull-ups, push-ups, like to strengthen some of the core muscles as well, some of the upper body strength. But I actually do this routine on like a Monday, Thursday combo. And then I mix it in with, on Wednesdays, I like to do something more high intensity in terms of running in the middle of the week. Either like some sort of high intensity, like a hill repeat type workout, or something where I'm going to push my speeds a little bit further. But I like to have that be in the middle of the week so that it gives me time to recover from the weekend and before the weekend in terms of, in case I'm racing and so forth. So in terms of like additional like non-mileage or distance running training, those are the types of things that I like to add in. And consistency is the key. Like it's Monday, Thursday without question. The Wednesday, faster run without question. Just like committing that, like making sure that that's something that you stick to, I think is really like huge. I've done everything from so not only like obviously running every day, but I've done other streaks where I'm just like making a commitment to myself. And I've done like 150-day workout like streaks and stuff like that, where I'm just going like few months in a row, and I'm going to go through a series of exercises. I'm going to like do them every day. I'm going to like increment up, dial it up when I need to, when I feel good. And on days when I need to rest, I'll just dial it back a little bit. And it can be any kind of workout that's going to be strengthening core muscles primarily, the hips, the glutes, like the supporting cast and muscles. And I like to do a lot of one-legged exercises, so things that are going to simulate, a running stride and/or help strengthen, like a single leg. Because you're essentially running is by definition just pushing off with one leg, right? Mm-hmm. So I think those are critical, and it's easy to overlook. Like when it comes to running, like a lot of theories talk about just running is like the best way to get better, and there's a lot to that because that's what you're going to be doing out there. You don't necessarily want to put on like a ton of upper body weight, for example, because it's going to really hinder you as you go further. But you do need to have strength in those muscles. So I think that having that kind of balance is really crucial.
That's awesome. And then in terms of your long run days, what's that look like incorporated in between like the fast day on the Wednesday, the weight training as well? So what's your run week typically look like? Say leading up, I guess for me, I'm always interested in ultra running. So if you're getting ready for a 100-miler, what's that week or the weeks prior leading up look like for you? Do you dial back on the weight training a bit? Like what's the realm for that?
Yeah, I mean higher level. Like I think about like the summer being typically where I'm going to be racing a lot. So the first half of the year, I'm thinking a lot more about the weight training, the HIIT routines, boot camps, thinking about like speed work and so forth. And then once I hit summer, I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to be racing and recovering a lot. And anything in between is like gravy. But literally, I do focus a ton on the recovery side of things, especially after 100-miler. And I get asked that a lot, like, how do you run so many 100-mile races like without like a lot of time to recover? And a huge part of that is just understanding like that you do need to let yourself like ease back in, to harder efforts and give yourself that time to recover properly, like get the sleep that you need, get the nutrition that you need, and then go real easy. Like I really love, and this isn't really talking to your question yet, but I like to ease off of 100 by having like 3 to 4 easy days afterwards. And as part of the definition of the streak is like every day, right? So that could just be like a couple of miles, like easy miles, just getting the body moving, doing some other exercises that might be either strengthening or stretching. Now leading up to a 100-miler, it really depends. Like, is the 100-miler going to be used for training for a 200-miler? Mm-hmm. And that's a legitimate thing because there really isn't another way to get the distance that you would want for training for a 200. So if it's not my A goal and it's just to try to get the miles in and try to get the time on feet, then I'll go into a 100-miler with tired legs if I need be. So I won't necessarily hold back on training or anything like that. If it's going to be like a race for me, like this year, I'll probably try at Western States to give, like, if I had to pick a 100-miler, because I got a lot of them this summer, that's the one I'm going to probably try to give a little extra effort for. So like the week before, 2 weeks before that, I'm going to have a 100-miler, but probably that gap in between those 2 weeks, it'll be very easy running. It'll probably be like a little faster workout, like shorter, 10, 12-mile distance the weekend before, but like not really too much before that or after that. And then just slow, easy runs as I ramp into that weekend. If I go back a few weeks before a 100-miler, I really like to have at least like a 50-mile effort if I can, at like a moderate to moderate hard effort level, and really just try to like simulate like what's that going to feel like when I go into the 100-miler, build some confidence, but not like empty the tank completely, so I still have something left for the 100-mile effort. And even better, if I can stack like a 50-mile in a marathon on a Saturday, Sunday, that's like, to me, like the perfect workout a few weeks before a 100-mile effort. For most people, I would say like 3 to 4 weeks. You like probably don't want to go any closer than 3 to 4 weeks before, but that's probably like perfect. And then again, like for the 100-mile prep, it really just depends. Like I use a lot of races to train for convenience sake, just because they have aid stations.
Yeah, true.
Like there's like crowds, like the support, like you get energy from that, and it's also just logistically a lot easier than necessarily like lugging a bunch of stuff out to a certain turnaround point or like coordinating like a really long training effort and so forth. So if I can find a local trail race or a local run, or even a race that might be at a great destination for fun, like just for a little weekend trip, and then I'll schedule that in and then use that for training for the 100.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You've had time to experience and experiment with that, eh?
A lot of time, yeah. So I've had a lot of folks ask me about, like, especially 100-mile distance, and that back-to-back effort. Like Saturday, Sunday is always really good. You can do Friday, Saturday, you can do whatever days. If you can get some time during the evening, like for a lot of folks, they haven't actually experienced having like a headlamp on, or running at night, or running through like a period where you know you're going to be sleepy. I think all those are like critical to practice. And then you figure out like what kind of gear you want to have on, like you know, when you're going to need to change gear, when you're going to need to do certain things that come up in these longer distance runs.
And going off that, what's your nutrition like? 'Cause I know I was following this guy Timothy Olson, and I watched a few little like clips on him, and he went from a carb-based diet to more of a fat-based diet. I don't know, have you played around with those? Because you've done so many hundreds. Have you tried different aspects of a fat-based diet prior to 100 and then into 100, or has it been mostly like you know your body works well on carbs?
Yeah, it's a good question. I definitely have not done like a dedicated keto strategy, like just trying to get into a ketogenic state. I know a lot of athletes have some success with that, especially like Zach Bitter, you know, our 100-mile record holder. One of my buddies, I have a few friends who've actually done this with great success, and they've seen, you know, 2-3 hours dropped off their 100-mile time. So they might have been in the, you know, fast, like 16, 17-hour range, but they're like pushing 15 hours or 14. And of course, Zach Bitter, like 12, you know, sub 12 is like, it's crazy. It's just mind-boggling.
It's insane.
So, you know, if you can get your body to utilize the fat store, you essentially have, the theory is you have unlimited supply of energy stored there. That said, those guys usually will supplement with carbs during their races, not during training or other times of the year. If you specifically talk to Zach Bitter about this, he'll tell you, like, you know, why not? Like, you want those, you know, to burn off, like, right away while you're out there. But for me personally, you know, I actually about a year ago started a vegan diet, which just plant-based essentially. The motivation was really that my wife had, you know, wanted to basically shift her diet to like solve some other issues she was facing. So I was like, okay, cool, let's try it out. And you know, I love that. It's definitely given us an opportunity to try different things. And there's a lot of alternatives out there, but I'm not like for or against any of these particular strategies necessarily. I think it's worth trying different things, seeing what works for you. For me, I've always, you know, I use carbs for all kinds of fuel, for every kind of distance race. I don't shy away from any of that. But just in the last like years, just a little over a year now, have, you know, weaned off of eating meat. But at first I thought I was going to miss it because I really enjoyed like bacon and like certain types of foods. But honestly, it's like we're really lucky in San Diego, especially. But and a lot of sources for protein, which, you know, a lot of people ask about protein and stuff like that. But there's actually just a ton of that in a lot of different types of foods. So, but I definitely have a strategy for like my baseline calories and then how I supplement and eat and the way that I eat during a race. So I fuel with it's a complex carb essentially in my bottles. It's called Carbo Pro. It's just a corn-based complex carb, and the idea is it's like my baseline fuel. And my promise to myself is I have it in my bottle no matter what when I'm out there racing, especially 100 mile, 200 mile, and it's just constant drip system of calories coming in. And then I'll graze at aid stations. Like that's one of the things that I really like to like make a point of is that I don't believe in like eating big old meals because some of these aid stations have huge spreads, lots of food. You can just you can down a burger or two. I hear that, I'm like, oh, but you're gonna now be digesting all that stuff, and all the blood's gonna go to your stomach and all that kind of stuff. It'll make you tired. So like, I always have a rule. It's like a 3-bite rule, and essentially, I'll go to an aid station. Like let's say there's 10 miles in between, and I'm just gonna go for 3 bites, whatever it is, like 3 proper bites, and that should be enough calories in addition to whatever else I'm taking in while I'm again drinking the Carb Pro or taking out some gels. Yeah.
Damn man, that's good strategy. And it's obviously it's worked for you, right? It seems to make sense. I think sometimes you're right. You can get to those aid stations and like you have a buffet and you're just starving, and all you want to do is just eat everything you see. But you tend not to think about, okay, like 5 miles down the road, how is that going to affect my stomach or my digestion, right? So.
Yeah. I think a lot of folks who have stomach problems, that usually happens from 2 reasons. Like the first one is usually just not enough calories in. Like I think it's easy to under-calculate like how much you truly do need. But there's 2 sort of reminders that I also like to think about, and one is your stomach can only process so many calories per hour. That's just like a fundamental thing. You have to figure out what that is for you. But most people, it's like 250, maybe 3. And then like an elite athlete maybe can push like 350, 400 calories, but anything more than that is kind of preposterous. Like your stomach just would be bombarded. If it got like say 800 calories all at once, it's not gonna be able to use all that. So just that sort of speaks to having that steady flow of calorie intake, which is why I like to have everything in my bottles. So it's just I know I'm getting them down. I like bottles over like a pack, for example, like a bladder, because I see what I'm taking down. So it's not like hidden in the back of my pack. It's like I can feel exactly, okay, got that bottle down, I got this bottle down. This was like 300 or 400 calories, another 300 or 400 calories, and I can really get a good feel for that. Not saying that there's anything wrong with having a pack, but I think it's valuable to know like the rate at which you're consuming things. Make that easy for you to be able to keep track of.
So how would you maintain that? So per bottle you're saying about an hour's worth of fluid? Or are you trying to get 150?
Great question. So so there's 2 things there. One is just your stomach, like just being aware that your stomach can only process so much and utilize so many calories per hour at a time. Those bottles I might take 2 bottles between like a 10-mile section or something and expect to finish that. The 10 miles could take a couple hours, right? Like on a real treacherous terrain, like some hilly trails or something like that. So that's basically where I would push that 300 to 400 calorie threshold. It's also important, and it's also helpful to get the hydration down that you need. Obviously, you need to be getting the water down, and so mixing it with something that will give you both is really handy. And then later on in races, like sometimes getting those calories down in liquid form isn't always easy. So especially for a 200 miler, at some point you got to eat actual food. So that's where like the grazing technique that I like to do, where I really limit myself against like 3 bites essentially, and that's really worked out great. And just being consistent with that. And then in terms of what your stomach can do, obviously all the standard advice, like don't try like random stuff you've never had before, especially stuff you've never had while you've been running, and so forth.
Which is tough to do, right? Because when you're out there and you see something that looks really good, you're like, probably shouldn't have it, but in the moment, you're like kind of like delusional type. You're like, fuck it, I'm just gonna do it anyways, right? So
I would try to curb the urge until like the last 10 miles if you can. Like if you're gonna do it, like wait till the end.
Yeah.
But don't eat the mystery meat thing, like it's sitting there like at mile 30 or something.
Yeah, that's good advice right there. No mystery meat for you. And then going off, because I wanted to definitely get into the mindset, because I think, and that's literally why I jumped into ultras. I did this challenge, this year-long challenge, and I Googled world's toughest challenges, and a lot of it was like endurance racing, endurance challenges, and obviously for the mental and the physical. A lot of it is that mental breakdown of like, you really don't think your body can go anymore, and then you push through it, and you can see some crazy stuff that your body and mind can accomplish. So you going into these 200s, which, again, they are beasts. For people that don't know, these are multi-day runs. If you're not an elite runner like yourself, again, someone like myself, I'm looking at about almost 100 hours of running. For the MOAB, there's a 112-hour cutoff. The Tahoe 200, I think it's 100-hour cutoffs. Again, that's more than 4 days of running. Like it's pretty wild shit. So go off a little bit on the mindset, because for a lot of people, and I love doing this stuff because it allows me, if I do workshops or seminars, to discuss the pain versus pleasure dichotomy, and understanding to embrace discomfort, embrace the suck. Because I think for a lot of people, as soon as they get that pain or feeling of discomfort or uncertainty, it's like their body's signal to fly, that fight or flight, right? Where in reality, it is a signal, sure, but it doesn't mean that you gotta give up on yourself, because again, that's just a failing mentality. So tell us a little bit about those 200-mile mindsets that you've had, the times that you've, I know even for the MOAB this year, you got hurt pretty early on, right?
Yeah, I struggled early. So it's a great question. I was actually going to flip the question on you initially. Maybe I'll ask you afterwards.
Bring it on.
My first thought was like, it did really look like you jumped right into this race without like a whole bunch of 100-mile experience before. Maybe correct me if I'm wrong on that.
No, you're right. I was really raw, and that was part of the challenge. I wanted to do things I've never done before. Like I did my first 5K was last December. So like I'm a fast twitch guy. Like I'm a football player, a wrestler, and I wanted to prove to myself, but also to other people that you can do a lot of crazy shit in 1 year. Like, you can't just tell me that your 5K, you're going to train for a whole year and get a 5K. And no, your body and mind's capable of way more when you take the time and you put the effort and energy into accomplishing a major goal. So for me, I wanted to do something really crazy. I don't recommend it. It's not practical. It's not sane. But it was an experience, at least, to try to adopt and adapt a style of training a lot faster. So, yeah, it was insane, but...
Yeah. Well, it was pretty cool to see that you jumped right in there and just go for it. I mean, I think that's great advice, especially for, someone who's concerned about, I don't know if this is, if it's possible to do this. And I would just stop right there and be like, yes, it's absolutely possible. 100% of the time it's possible. And it's just about deciding.
Mm-hmm.
Step 1, sign up for the race. Step 2,
tell
everybody you know. Tell everybody you know you're going to do this craziest thing, and have them freak out on you and be like, there's no way, you can possibly do that. You're nuts. Is that safe? Is it healthy? Blah, blah, blah. That's all bullshit. You want to achieve it, just go for it. Don't tell anyone else, you can't, or it's dangerous, or whatever, mommy, I want, it's just all the excuses, push them to the side, and just decide that, you're going to do that. Step 1, sign up. Step 2, tell everybody. Step 3, just you have to have a filter. You have to know, just because someone else was born into a world where people tell you you're, you sort of inherit these limits that are, imposed upon you in an accidental way by just society. So-and-so says that this is the limit of, possibilities. So, you must believe this. And that can come from, family, friends, whatever, society. But you have to just push past that and just decide that you're going to try. And as soon as you decide you're going to try, and you tell people, and you get motivated, you've already kind of won at that point. You've already taken the critical steps to, move past what the perceived limitations are. So and that was it's an interesting dynamic. I definitely have I think everybody would experience that. You probably got a little bit of that from people like, you're crazy. Like, what are you thinking? Like, 4 days of running, like, in the mountains. Like, you've never run 100 miles. Like, what's going on here? And I think that's what's so like, awesome about it. It's like, that's all mental. Like, none of that has anything to do with, like training or anything like that. It's just a mindset. It's a can-do mindset. And really just trying to understand, like, you know, in the process, like, what that means to you in terms of, like, achievement, or in terms of, like the curiosity for me was always a thing, like a driving force. Like, well, what is possible? Like, what is possible for me? And not have someone else tell me what is possible for me. And I think that's just a critical takeaway, that, like, everybody should have that moment of realization that just because I can't do it doesn't mean that you can't do it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, going back to your original question, I think you're talking about, like, you know, well, you touched a little bit on the MOAB 240 this year for me. It was certainly a brutal experience because I had a real acute shin injury that I got while it was, like, a really rainy year this year, like a few days before the race, and so there's a lot of, like, mud and so forth, and I was like jumping over, like, a stream crossing in probably, like, mile 60 or 70, and I just slipped. Like, it was just a really slippery spot. Landed awkwardly, did, like, a weird yoga, like, maneuver, like, not on purpose, and like totally, like, hyperextended my like the top of my shin on the anterior tibialis. And it's like where the top of the foot and the shin connect. And the tendon was all totally jacked up, and the muscle was torn. I was able to persist, like, 30 more miles, and at that point I actually was, like, in second place overall. And then I took a wrong turn because there was, like, a bad marking, like 105 miles into the race, and it was a straight downhill shot after, like you know, 100. I think there was an aid station at 103, and it was still dark out. Like, the sun hadn't come out, and I just shot past it, like, 5 miles. All the guys behind me were chasing. They all shot past it, and then we all had to turn around and go back up. They had to have someone from the aid station come down to, like, remark it. But it was like this weird hairpin turn down a slope. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you remember that at all, but anyways, long story short, I got to that next aid station. I had caught up with the people who made the turn, who turned around faster than me. And by then I knew, like, it was, like, almost impossible for me to push off with the shin injury. So the last 120 miles were, like, this awkward power hiking shuffle, just struggle fest. But
jeez, man.
The first half, I mean, up until that point, I was moving pretty well. And those are the types of things you just encounter. Like, you can't predict it's going to happen. Like, you just have to be prepared for all of it, and, like, have the mindset that doesn't matter what's going to come up. Like, something will be a problem during your race. Like, probably multiple somethings will be a problem. Mm-hmm. You have to just, like, reset. You know, like, just know that, like, you've got enough time. You know, you just keep on pushing, keep trying. And, you know, unless you got some bone sticking out or something like that, then you probably can finish. So it may not be your favorite race. It may not be the most fun you've ever had because of the, you know, when you're healthy, obviously it's more fun because you can run a little bit better and so forth. But yeah, you can still make it happen. So.
Well, I like that. I like that mindset. Almost preempting yourself when you're going into something that crazy, or in just any endeavor, that you're going to experience shitty moments. I think you having that acceptance prior to the event is a lot easier to digest, because you've already kind of, like, told yourself, like, hey man, by the way, sometime in this thing, I'm going to want to quit. Sometime in this thing, it's going to suck. You're going to be in hell. You're going to regret even signing up for this thing. Like, it is what it is, right? I remember doing a Canadian death race this last year, right? It was a 70-miler. And I think I was, like, 55 miles in, so we were close to the end. But at that point, I had a high ankle sprain. And I remember seeing a sign that they put on a tree that said, "Remember, you signed up for this." I'm like, fuck's sake, see, they're right. Like, I paid the money, I signed, here I am, like, I chose to do this. It is what it is, right? So, and you finish, and it sucks, and you say you're never going to do another one again, and then next thing you know, 3 days later, you're signed up for one that's longer, and you're like, I don't get what's going on here, but something's weird is going on. So yeah, it really is crazy. But doing that, letting yourself know that like shit's gonna hit the fan at some point, is gonna happen, right? And even your mindset of getting people to sign up off the bat, which I love too, and I'm a huge advocate of that. Because again, there's always going to be a reason not to do something. You're always going to hear something. In most of the world, especially for ultras, nobody can relate with that. Like, it's not a relatable thing. So you're going to have people, of course they're going to doubt that, because they've never done it. We're listening to people a lot of the times that haven't even put themselves in that environment telling you that you can't do it. Like, I appreciate the opinion. Am I going to listen? You've never been there. Like, I don't want to hear a guy who's broke give me financial advice. Right? And it's the same kind of concept. So often, we take the opinion of people that we love and respect, regardless if they've been where we want to go, and that hinders us. That holds us back from accomplishing, or at least even attempting to do something crazy or cool. So, yeah, I like the idea. Yeah, sign. If you're excited about something, when you're in your head, you're like, yo, this gets my heart pumping and blood going. Sign up for it. Do it. Figure out the rest later. The rest will take care of itself. But I guarantee if you don't, you're going to find a reason tomorrow to not do it. Is what it is.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah, before we go, man, I don't want to keep you all night here, and we probably could talk a lot longer. Tell us a little bit about your accomplishments. I want to hear, you've done so many races. Yeah, so give me a list here.
Well, I can tell you a little bit about what I've done and then kind of stuff I got planned.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So, well, I guess, obviously, the 200 milers, I mean, I just finished my 8th 200 miler in February, running the Franklin's 200 mile, and out in El Paso, of all places. And that was pretty gnarly. It was 50 plus thousand feet of climbing.
Wow.
So that was definitely the hardest in terms of climbing. 200 I've done. So that's one of 8. I've done Tahoe 200 5 times. And the 2017, I was fortunate to come away with the victory there. And in 2017, the MOAB 240, I was the guy who lost to Courtney by almost an hour. So I took first male, second overall, and it was a weird one. I had an unfortunate second night where I got lost, like badly lost. And there was the short version is there was a crazy fork with like 6 or 7 different ways you could go.
Oh.
And it was vandalized, and I think it was partially vandalized by people and maybe also animals, like just chewing off ribbons and stuff. But I got stuck. I went like a mile to 2 miles out in every single direction and couldn't figure out where to go.
No.
It was my own fault because I didn't have like a GPS or anything like that, so like I didn't have the map. I think because of that incident, maybe Candace decided she would require everyone to have a GPS now, like with the map on your phone or whatever. Mm-hmm. But I had to wait for the next person to come along in order to continue. So that was crazy. But still managed to hang on for the men's side of that one. I've won a few like smaller 100-mile races, but I love long distances. I mean, of the 38 now races of 100 miles or longer, like I love the challenge. I love the challenge of like, well, what can you do in 24 hours or like maybe sub 20 or so, and I love the multi-day challenge. Like I love the idea of pushing through and seeing like how long I can, like how far I can actually go without sleeping, for example. So I'm like really fascinated by sleep deprivation.
Okay.
And some of the challenges that come up with 200-mile races, and I mean, you go from everything from like hallucinations to just like the extreme effect that like the lack of sleep will have on your brain, and like how you cope with that.
And how? Sorry to cut you off, but how have you coped with those moments?
Well, honestly, I've done 3 200-milers now without sleep at all, and
Damn.
In one case it worked out really well, and in another case it worked out pretty well, except for some course vandalism, and then the third time I did it, it was just brutal. It was so brutal. Like I I joke a lot about like the so-called third night because I have this theory, and it's hard to test this out because there's only a small sampling of people who've done these races. But for me, like I can go about 60 hours without sleeping, with through a hard effort race. Mm-hmm. And then once I hit like 60 to 64 hours, it's sort of like the danger zone. Like I'm not sure. Certainly over that, it's like I feel like something just changes in terms of how well I can process like what's going on, and like so it's definitely pushing the bounds of like not just hallucinations, but like being able to navigate, especially like at night and stuff like that. So yeah, I had an experience last year at Tahoe, which where I should have slept like for maybe 10 or 15 minutes just to reset the brain, and but again, like you just don't know what those limits are until you push them and you go into them and you hit them and you realize, okay, I pushed that too far, for example. But I was sleepwalking like at a mile per hour for like hours through the night.
Wow.
Which was it was pretty wild. So yeah, I mean it's fun to push those limits and you don't know where they are until you do like push to the line, and then you kind of figure out where they are and make adjustments. So now it's like, okay, I know where I'm going to sleep, like at what hour. It's typically by hour, but it could be a combination of hour and overall effort. Just depends on like the race. But the hallucinations are definitely a real thing. Like I don't know if you had a lot of experience with that while you were out there, or if you did like many hours of sleep, or what your strategy was like. I'd be kind of curious to know how you approach that.
Yeah, so with the MOAB, like the other ones I've done were all like 24-hour runs, so obviously you don't need to sleep in those ones. But so the MOAB, so that's that one I didn't finish, right? So even with all your amazing advice, man, which again I was gonna say I madly appreciate, that helped me out a lot, because I think it was right after my death race where my feet were like mangled. I was like, all right, I gotta fix them. I gotta fix this shit for the MOAB, right? And the socks were really good. The toe socks were amazing. I didn't get any blisters, so I was a big fan of those ones. But I think I was about mile 70 in before the first sleep station. I think at that point, cause at that point I've already had like a partial tear in my calf. I didn't know. I thought it was a cramp, which you don't know, right? It's just you think it's a little bit tight or whatever, and you're trying to compress it, and before you know it, it keeps getting worse and gets better at sometimes. So at that point, I was I think about 24 hours in, so I was moving kind of slow at the end there, and I started seeing, because again, when you know the sleep station's coming up, I started kind of seeing people there. And I was with two girls, and I kept saying like, "Oh, like they were on the hill over there," and they're like, "No, like that's like they're trees." And I'm like, "No, like I swear those are. I see the people." And I was like, and I read about this stuff prior, so I'm like, I'm trying to be like, maybe I'm just talking myself into this, but I'm like, no, I really do see some people on that hill there. And we just kept going. Every time we go around a corner, you'd think the aid station would be there, and you're convinced that you see something, or you see the light, and you see the tents, and it's not there. You're like, what the hell is going on here? And I did like 3 or 4 times, and then they started joking about like, all right, man, maybe you gotta get some sleep when you get there. So, and then that's when I got to the aid station, where it was the first sleep station, and I was like, my calf was already like mangled, so I was like, all right, let's just sleep it off, try to like ice it, tape it, figure it out, and I tried sleeping for like 60 to 90 minutes. Obviously, it wasn't much of a sleep. It was kind of an on and off. My leg was, trying to straighten it, curl it, whatever. I think after that, I just got back up and trekked down the trail another 8 miles, and then I was just like, man, this calf is. Yeah. It was kind of like, again, for me, again, maybe I could have gone more. Like again, I take a lot of pride not being a bitch that way, but like the calf was swollen. It was on a straight trail, and I think I was going like less than 2 miles an hour, so slow. Where I was like, man, this is and again, like it was at the pace. We're on a flat terrain. If you're going that slow, I was kind of doing the math in my head, and I'm like, if I'm going this slow on straight terrain, easy terrain, but who knows, right? For me, that's what I'm looking forward to, and I love that aspect of, okay, let's get a real training camp in, because again, at that point, maybe 3-4 months of training, like it's not smart. It's not.
A lot, yeah.
No, and like within that, like I had a month where I was just cycling the Great Lakes of Ontario, so I was like, you didn't even run that month. It's just a lot of in between of switching things up. So I'm excited this year to put. I have a 120-mile run in Vancouver in August before the Tahoe this year,
Awesome.
So I like the idea of getting that 120 in 2 months in prior to no, a month prior to Tahoe. So I like that aspect. So I'm kind of giving myself a chance to get a little bit more acclimated. And in the meantime, obviously, I think I have a 50 miler in May, and I have another event I'm working on. So at least get a few different races in and do a little bit more intelligently this time. So, and we'll see. Then we'll see what happens in Tahoe 200 this year. I'll see how many hallucinations I get. I'll see how I do. And yeah, I'm trying to be a lot more intelligent with this one because I really do. Like I'm like I gotta finish this one. I'm gonna finish Tahoe. I'm not coming back without doing this 200, man. Like it ain't happening. So. So I'm excited to see what we can do, right, and try to rectify as many uncertainties. Like I said, I know there's going to be moments where I'm going to want to quit and I'm going to fight through it, but it's just how can I rectify those big moments of, injury prevention. That's kind of where my head is at, because I'll push through as much as I can, and again, there's going to be very little that's going to stop me, so I'm like, how can I make sure I don't injure anything to such a degree? But either way, I just got to do it.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Well, that's a huge point. I often think sometimes, especially if you're racing a lot and you're going like long distance, it's a lot more beneficial to show up healthy,
Mm-hmm.
Than to be like a little overtrained or trained a little extra. If you have anything or like any kind of issue that's coming up, it's better just to rest it a little bit. You'll be totally fine if you've done a bunch of work before that, but try to get to the starting line healthy and to your point, navigate that through the race. Like you gotta just, obviously, like, I've had this with the shin injury before and stuff like that, so I know exactly how that feels. It's tough. It's like really tough, and so, just making sure that you can get through that, in one piece is definitely like the way to do it.
Yeah.
And it's more fun if you survive without like any major issues because. You know that like you fulfilled closer to your potential.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
You just hobbled through and like you kind of finished and like that's still like incredible, but like you left some on the table, which in many ways is probably what you're feeling right now. Or like, man, I know I can do this, and so it's just sort of getting to that point where everything clicks.
Yeah, like you said, I want to run past the finish line. The other races I've done, like it was like. My foot was all blistered and mangled because like the mud, and I had like one pair of socks. Again, just rookie stuff, and like I was like hobbling over the finish line for that one. I'm like, I want to run over this thing. I don't want to be like a cripple and in a wheelchair 2 seconds after. Like I want to be able to, be in pain, but run through it. So it's I got a few goals to do it in a more timely fashion and in a more appropriate fashion. But again, it's all part of the process and the training period, right?
Yeah, I like that build-up, the 50-miler and the 120. Which race is the 120-miler you're doing?
The Fat Dog in Vancouver.
Sweet. Okay, I've heard a lot of awesome things about that race.
Yeah. So I'm excited. I usually go solo because again, for me, I'm a guy that likes to sign up for stuff and just go. So this year I've kind of got opened up to the runner community a bit more. So I got 2 friends and I are going, and the one gentleman actually won a 100-miler back here in Ancaster. And the other one had a lot of experience at 100, so it's going to be nice to kind of train with people that are better than me, just because, like I said, it puts you in a different category of, okay, this is what real training and intelligent training looks like. So, yeah, and I did a lot of vertical miles last year, I did a lot of horizontal, I didn't do a lot of vertical, which in my area isn't that easy to do. You have to kind of go 4 or 5 hours out if you want to get a lot of real, steep elevation, so... But you gotta do it, right? You don't want to get to a place where there is a lot of hills, and all of a sudden, your body's in shock, being like, "Hey, bro, you haven't done this ever," So.
Exactly.
And what else do you have planned this year? What races do you got going on?
Yeah. So I'm gonna do this thing called the Great 8, and it's an extension of a series of races, called the Last Great Race. And that's also an extension of what they call the Grand Slam of ultra running. So for those who don't know about the Grand Slam of ultra running is running 4 of the original 500 milers, including Western states, including Leadville, including Wasatch, and then one of either Vermont or Old Dominion. And that's sort of, actually, is that technically, I think you can do 4, I think it was 5.
those are the 5 original 100 milers, and then there's the 6th one called the Angeles Crest 100 miler. And so those 6 comprise what's called the last great race. And really, like, you can't even really think about trying this series until you get into Western states. And that's kind of like the key, because if you don't get into that race, you're not going to be able to do it. So this year I got lucky. It was my 5th year trying to get in to Western states, got in, and then that sort of domino effect happened where it was like, okay, well, let me try to get into all the other ones. Got into Angeles Crest, got into Leadville, got into Wasatch, and then got into Vermont, and then Old Dominion didn't have a lottery, but it was just an incredibly lucky year. And for a lot of races, I've only done one of those 6 before. I've done Angel, but the stars aligned, so to speak, to be able to put this together. And for context, it's the last great race. Only 38 people, I think, have actually done this.
Wow.
Since the and I think it was like 1989 might have been the first year, or 1990. But essentially, it was everything that existed in the U.S. For a 100-mile distance. And the idea was you do them all like in one summer. And so it'll be pretty sweet to try to do that. And then I threw in number 7 and number 8 in terms of the 8 originals. This is like the Great 8 is what I'm calling it. Mm-hmm. And it's the last great race plus the Mohican 100 mile. And that was number 7. And then the Arkansas Traveler, which is a little later in the year in October, but threw it in there. So that's like the 8 original 100 milers, everything through 1991.
Wow.
And I did a little research on that. This is like the historian, like statistical like side of my brain where I'm like, I wonder if anyone's done this. And I found 3 people who've ever done this. One's from Canada, one is from Germany. They both did it in 2000. So it's been 19 years since anyone's done it.
Wow.
And then the original person who did it back in, I believe it would have been 1991 or 1992 when they did it, was an American. So it'd be kind of cool to be number 4 to go after the last great race. That starts in end of May, early June. So I'll be just literally like racing 300s in June, and 100 in the middle of July. And then August is going to be pretty gnarly. I'll be honest, like I'll have Angeles Crest, Leadville, and then we're going to fly out to run UTMB, which is the Ultra Trail du Mont Blanc in Chamonix, which it's basically the most spectacular like mountains like I've ever run on before. I did this 3 years ago. It's like unbelievable, but it's a tour around France, Italy, Switzerland.
Wow.
On Mont Blanc, and it's like 171 kilometers. So it's like about 105, 106 miles with like 33 or 34,000 feet of vertical climbing. And just like spectacular though. It's like snow-capped, glacier-capped mountains, just really steep and aggressive, but just awesome. But so that like Leadville, and like the week after, we fly out, and then I'm going to run UTMB, and then fly back, run Wasatch early September, and then Tahoe will be like, so they'll be like, I think it's 4 out of 5 weeks. It's going to be pretty gnarly. By the time I see Tahoe, I'm either going to be like, really dialed in and fit, like just like feeling amazing, or I'm going to be like completely wrecked from like this entire summer of running. So we'll see what happens there.
That's crazy, man.
And then another one that's going to be interesting. I got into the Big's backyard.
Oh, the one like you raced to the last man standing.
Yeah, last man standing.
Jeez.
So I don't know if you've been following along with like the Barclays and everything.
Yeah.
It's the same race director who does this race, and it's on his like property in Tennessee. And the whole goal is like it like pays his property taxes, like the fees paid.
Oh, really?
This race, but it caught on popularity like here in the States. I think last year was a big year for the race, and the winner went like 273 miles or 200, like just crazy distances. So this year could be a 300-mile race.
Wow.
Or longer, who knows? So that's in October.
Jeez, man.
Yeah.
Like, how do you, this is like, how do you recover between, I know you said, like, consistency, you've been doing this for over 10 years, but, like, how does your body from 100, again, you have 3 weeks in a row of 100 sometimes, like, what are you doing in between? Is it no running at that point, or well, not no running, obviously, they got the streak to continue on in the whole process, but are you doing a lot of rehab in between? Like, what's that look like?
Yeah, I mean, like the 2 days after are always like the easiest possible effort run I can do. A couple of miles, like 2 to 3 miles. I mean, it could be anywhere from like 10 to 15 minute, like 15-minute miles, like slow. Like no need to like impress anybody on your run. It's just about getting the blood flowing, getting the muscles to like realize, okay, you can still move, you're okay. And I actually am a big believer in like the circulation, like blood flow, and like making sure that the natural like recovery mechanisms are just triggered, so that like all the whatever lactic acid buildup or anything that your body is just like trying to flush out of its system after these big races, it has a chance to do that. And usually by like the 3rd and 4th day, I'll feel like okay, I can just slowly, incrementally increase the effort. And it's usually not distance either. Like after a 200 miler, depending on how my body is, like if I injured myself during the race, that's one thing, I'll have to accommodate that. But for other like normal circumstances, I just make sure that I'm getting like the good nutrition in. I think sleep is really underrated. So like for all the training weeks that you put in, big efforts, like making sure you get extra sleep for like all those different events, and really that's like one of the most natural healing like processes. One thing I like to look at is like my resting heart rate. So after a big event like a 200 miler, my resting heart rate will go up like by like maybe 10. And so like when I sleep, I'll know, okay, that night I sleep, I have like a whatever garment on my wrist, and I'll use that to keep track of my sleep at night. And I'll know when my sleeping heart rate drops enough that I've gotten like enough rest to continue forward. So I think that's like a nice clue or indicator. But I mix it up depending on how much time is in between. I mean, I'll sometimes like the Monday after a 100 miler, I'll go right back into my HIIT routines, boot camps, and then and other times if I have an injury or like some issue I'm like trying to work through, I'll just dial back. So it's a little bit of listen to your body, but like don't be too afraid to like jump back into training, because you're gonna have an additive effect over time. You just don't want to push too soon, too early, too soon. Especially in areas where you might have like tightness. So like I wouldn't recommend going for like a hard track workout the days after a 100 mile or something like that, just because of the when you talk about the intensity levels, like I think that week after is like low intensity. So even if you go a little faster, as long as you're not like outputting, you're not like going like anaerobic on your workouts and going like really hard.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're pretty safe. I think most of those I think most of those injuries occur, especially like when you strain something or you pull something, or it usually connects back to some sort of muscle tightness as a result of the race itself. So working on, like I have one of those Hypervolt massagers, whatever.
Is that the gun one?
It's like the Theragun or whatever that's called, but it's just basically the same idea, and it's just like another tool to like use to help loosen up the muscles, get blood flowing to those areas, and so forth. That's super helpful, I think. And then, like I mentioned, like thinking about your nutrition, just getting like a lot of good food down, and you're gonna be hungry after these races, but like you want to eat quality food. So treat yourself a little bit, but like try your best to like get in nutrition. So those are some keys I'd say.
It's awesome, man. Now, have you ever thought of documenting this? Because this is shit like people should see, man.
Oh, the last great rate, or
any of it, man. Like I'm super intrigued by, again, yeah, like because it's awesome. Not really even for me. I always like the idea of like documenting for yourself to look back on, because this is gonna be some crazy shit, and you're always gonna have the memories that are gonna stick with you no matter what. But just to kind of see it, I love always seeing the visual. Like, that's why I love pictures, right? It just, a picture tells a story, and it's kind of cool to see like even a video, a condensed video, just like the mind working and you thinking back to it. Have you ever thought about doing anything documentary wise?
Yeah, certainly open to it. I think this year in particular, because it's such a special opportunity,
Yeah.
to line up those 8 original 100-milers. And for the record, I did look to see what number 9 and 10 were. It's like a rounder number, and
of course.
It's even more crazy. But it turned out that the 9th one was actually overlapped another one of the 8.
Oh, okay.
So scheduling wouldn't work out. It was actually Hard Rock. So there are 2 problems. One is it's almost impossible to get into Hard Rock. The second was it's the same weekend as Vermont, which is one of the other 8. But that's why I ended up with 8. But I did buy a GoPro. I'll throw that out there. I'm totally open to some tips and recommendations on things that you think people would want to see.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna take it out for those races and try to capture part of the experience. I definitely have I don't want necessarily to make that the priority. Obviously getting through the races.
Yeah, for sure.
Is really my goal. It's a body of work effort, so I have to make sure that I can get through all those races and try to pick 1 or 2 that I really want to give a little bit more effort to. Like I mentioned, Western States, and I just feel really fit for that one in particular. But so we'll see. I hope to put something together, at least collect enough footage to, like you said, have some memories to share. If something more comes out of it, that'd be cool too, for sure.
That's awesome, man. You got a hell of a summer plan. Holy shit, that's insane. I'm pumped to watch it, man. That's for sure. I'm like I said, what you've done is incredible. It's inspiring, right? Because again, I think a lot of people can take a lot out of what you're doing from not only the consistency standpoint, but having that purpose in your life. And I think a lot of people get tied down to the practicality or the traditional aspects of life. Where there's a lot out there to challenge yourself with, and I think when people do give themselves an opportunity to challenge themselves physically and mentally, you gain a lot of perspective, you gain a lot of self-awareness. 2 characteristics that are very underrated, and I think if you have those 2 characteristics in your life, and that's what I love about ultra running, it doesn't blur the lines, it's very black and white, it kind of tells you where you stand in life, and it's tough to lie to yourself when you kind of get exposed and you're so naked out there. And I think if more people throw themselves in environments where they are forced to challenge themselves, forced to answer tough questions, forced to ask the right questions and dive into internal dialogue like that, it's very, very powerful. And obviously for you, you've done a great job with that. And anything you can leave us out on where you find that through these races, through these challenges, that you've gained from it from a more of an intrinsic standpoint, a more fulfilling lifestyle?
Sure. I think you nailed it. I mean, I would say, first and foremost, you give yourself an opportunity to, especially if you're a curious person, you have the opportunity to see what is possible, and kind of take like I mentioned earlier, society's you're born into limits, what everyone thinks is possible, and just see how it applies to you. And it's not necessarily there is no one right way to do this or one correct answer. And I feel you're also able to evolve as you go. Your goal setting can change and evolve and grow as you do, and your experiences do. And where the bar is that you want to set for yourself, continuously grows and changes. Like I mentioned, just about 8 years, just a little more than 8 to 9 years ago was when I started running early. And I would never have jumped this far down.
We lost you there, unless you're there. We're fighting to hear you. Bringing back connection. Oh, sorry, man. So I lost connection for the last minute. So you might have been talking to yourself.
Awesome. So okay, what was
Just
the last
repeat.
thing?
Just repeat word for word what you were talking about. No, just from what you've got out of challenging yourself.
I'll rewind. Yeah, that's right. So I think I mentioned, I think you nailed it in terms of there's this chance to like test yourself, test like what you're capable of achieving, and kind of disproving like what you're born into as like this, like what is possible, like what society says you can and cannot do.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the fact that over time that particular perspective will change and grow and evolve, and you'll realize, okay, I've set this bar for myself. Now let me set this other bar, and when you hit that one, you're like, well, man, I can go further than that, and so it's a really empowering process to go through and to really see. It's very eye opening, like just how limited society, like those types of constraints and rules you're born into, like just how limiting they are, and so kind of putting those to the side. I love the idea that you can have time, like just time to yourself to like think through things and reflect and be introspective. We all have things we're working through in a variety of areas of our lives. So, thinking through that issue you're working through at work, like something you're troubleshooting in a relationship or like with a friend or whatever it is, and you have time to kind of think through things, digest them, be thoughtful, mindful. And there's a sort of meditative process as well that comes along with just being outside. Like a lot of people, I think, are cooped up. They're in their office, they're in their home, they're whatever. And getting outside in touch with the natural environment, the mountains, trails, whatever it is. And that's just like being incredibly like human, and it's been a little bit lost on us as a society over time. And so grounding yourself to the earth in that way is, I think, like not quite like spiritual, but like there's just like a healing process that comes along with that. And I think that's undervalued, like in today's society, with just so much other things to keep you distracted.
Mm-hmm.
So it's nice to kind of go back to fundamentals like that, like you're taking in your like clean air, like you're breathing, like moving, like our bodies are meant to move, like just and then like the community. So like all the stories like you can share, like these conversations we can have, like these things are born out of like shared struggle, shared challenge, and like these bonds are like very strong because we know what it's like. And so that's, I think, extremely incredible. And then there's the feeling of like just accomplishment. I think is like intrinsically human to like want to achieve something, and sometimes you can't do that at your job, or you can't necessarily, or it's harder to do in certain areas. But like there's certain things that you 100% control, and like running would be one of them, right? Like you decide, like if you go out the door and do that training run, you decide if you sign up for that race. You decide if you continue forward. Like it's just it's a beautiful process that you get to decide like what the next step is. So that's incredibly empowering. And then the feeling of finishing those types of challenges where you're pushed to your limit just makes you feel like you can do anything. And you can apply that to pretty much any area of your life. So I think all that is incredibly positive. And it doesn't really matter what your motivation is, like to get into it. It's it's sort of like it's whatever you want to get out of it, whatever you give to it. Running in general, like you'll get back tenfold. Like you're gonna get back like the positive, like the energy you get from just getting that fresh air, getting the endorphin kick, getting that like struggle, and then powering through the struggle, and then remembering like how bad it was, and then being successful to get to the finish. And so all those are just like extremely like incredible, and empowering. So I would say that those are a few things I really enjoy about it. And I also love to see people as they grow and evolve and change. And you see a lot of like these amazing success stories where people just turn their entire world around. Their whole perspective on life changes. Like everything is better. Like just food tastes better. Like just you're not as like things don't bother. I don't think anything really bothers me anymore. Like I just feel like there's a natural medicine that's involved.
Yeah.
Like it's a mental medicine. It's like it's really hard to describe except for like the sort of like the phrase like "don't sweat the small stuff" is like one of those like common ones. It's like there's like nothing that's like so bad that I have to get upset at. Like it's just all that's kind of small to me. Like it's you know, so it's just really nice because it allows you a chance to take a step back and understand that like you know. I don't know. I feel like I just have a generally bigger, greater ability to appreciate things that are already here, and so I would probably say that that's something that I would not have had without this experience, evolving through running and so forth.
That's amazing, man. Like you said it well. Like anything that you when you put yourself in that environment, man, your perspective changes. You're more grateful, appreciative, and obviously, happier. So it's really cool to see that and see how that can transfer over to, to your overall quality of life. So awesome message, man. Again, it was awesome for you taking the time out to do this.
Happy to. Thank you for having me.
No, absolutely, man. Absolutely. I really do appreciate you. Had an awesome summer. I'm going to be excited to follow along, and I'm going to promote the hell out of you because, again, man, I think a lot of people can learn a lot from watching you. And seeing what you do, and it puts things in perspective when you see someone do some incredible things. So keep at it, man. Again, you're making a greater impact, and I think everyone needs to hear that is making a greater impact than you probably think you are. So it's always cool to have someone like you on this and deliver your message.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it, and I'm gonna be following you along, and I look forward to towing that line at Tahoe.
Yeah, man. I'm excited to get in there with you.
Right on.
All right, Sean. Have a great summer, man. Again, we'll connect over social media anyways, but have a blast, man, and good luck with the training, okay?
Awesome. Thanks so much. You too.
See you, brother.
Cheers.